I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with an Inuit lady trying to understand the wisdom, and she's like, so Ronsley, halfway through the conversation, she goes, so Ronsley, if you're saying artificial intelligence is going to be the biggest conversation of our lifetime, how does it affect my relative, the beaver, and my relative, the tree, and my relative, the bear? And I was like, I had this quizzical look on my face, and she's like, you've never heard anyone speak like that, have you? I said, no. She's like, well, if we don't think about the ones that don't have a voice to say this is hurting me, then how are we gonna like move things forward without destroying other parts? Like, you know, if you just go after a goal without understanding what are you leaving behind in terms of destruction, that's not a great idea. So very right now focused on getting wisdom that's already been around for ages, centuries, like millennia.
Buckle up, folks. We're about to do a deep dive into AI with a true visionary, Ronsley Vaz, who's the founder of Amplify AI and the host of We Are Podcasts. We get into his story and how he shifted from the restaurant business to then podcast production, and ultimately his quest and passion on AI and how businesses can harness the power of AI. We specifically get into his concerns about misinformation being spread by self-proclaimed AI experts. We also get into the risks of adopting AI without proper alignment to your core values and your company's values. And we also get into the need for diverse information and data when developing AI. So if you're new to this channel, this show exists to inspire mission-driven entrepreneurs and help you develop your brands so that you can deliver your messages with clarity and with purpose. Now let's get into this episode of Be Your Brand with Ronsley Vaz. Did you have the intention to build a personal brand, or was it sort of trial and error accident?
When I started putting myself out there in the sense in the online world, I did a program called Key Person of Influence, and that's how I became buds with Daniel Priestley and Glenn Carlson and Mike Reed and the whole crew from Dent. We did the Dent podcast. They were like early believers in what I was doing. I kind of went in with about $500,000 of debt and came out paying that off in 2 years and 1 month, and having this ridiculous roller coaster of entrepreneurial journey. But yeah, I mean, they were very particular. I'm so glad I found them, because that Key Person of Influence, the 5 Ps and the framework that Daniel goes through in the book. And for your listeners, if you don't know what I'm talking about, find Key Person of Influence. It is for me, like, I applied it not only at that time and, you know, came from like minus to a positive figure, but I've since implemented those 5 Ps in different areas, in different businesses, and it's been absolutely insane. So yes, you know, one of the Ps in there, which is the 4th one, is called profile. And it basically was, the thing that stuck in my head is, you are who Google says you are. And I took that personally. So, you know, yes, I think in a way, of course, personal brand, but not intentionally, not like, oh, I'm going to build a personal brand, but because of the framework, that profile happened to happen. They were very specific about, you know, saying certain things about yourself that you wouldn't normally say. So, and putting yourself in a certain light, you know, expressing yourself in a certain way, and proving credibility and showing up in a certain manner, so on. So, yeah, I think, yeah, definitely, but not kind of, I'm going to build a personal brand. That was never an intention until a lot later on, maybe.
Yeah. Did it feel somewhat natural or unnatural for you? You know, was there any sort of muscle memory from any past experience that you had?
Yeah, that's a great question. Considering not long ago, when I say not long ago, maybe last week, everything is weird, like in time right now for me. But I think last week in a conversation came up about how people ask me before I go up on stage whether I'm nervous or stuff like that. But it just struck me that when I was in school, I was in the elocution team, I was in the debate team, and I was the captain of those teams, and I was playing sport, and I was doing all these other things that it took me a long time to even realize that those were beneficial now. But now I'm talking about like like last week is when it clicked. So yeah, for sure. I mean, experiences in school have been. So I did a lot of my schooling in India. I was born in Bahrain, but 6 years old, I came here to Goa, and my dad's belongs to this land, and so I did a lot of my schooling here. And when I did my bachelor's in India, so I did a bachelor of computer science and engineering, and to get that degree, it was 4 years. I gave 64 exams in 4 years to get that degree, and then I went to Australia. So I don't know, the way the education system works here is so different because you're trained on such a different level that I don't know. So I was lucky in a lot of senses, I suppose. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, so when you were doing the debates and you were on the treadmill of exchanging ideas and conversations, and especially now in this day and age where it seems like everybody is so PC to a degree, where they don't want to have conversations. They avoid conversations with anyone who has an opposite sort of framework or thought. Did you realize that at that time AI was going to come to play and technology was going to evolve to such a rate that it has been now? And then I have a second part to that question in terms of when you decided to go all in on it, because I know that is somewhat relatively recent for you.
Well, so when I did computer science and engineering, we did machine learning and deep learning, and we knew lots of things. Like we knew the blockchain, we knew those were all theory. We kind of knew what the platform was built on, and the principles behind it, and that's why it's come so naturally to me now. I think a lot earlier on when I was just talking about AI, I kept saying, like, I feel like I'm Neo in the Matrix and I just wanted to see what I see. But we understood the principles, but we didn't have like fast enough networks and fast enough transfer of data and cheap places to store data. Like, data, to be able to store data is just such a new thing. I don't think we realize the amount of data that is being stored, and how cheaply, and how what a small square inchage, if you want to say that's a word, I don't know whether that's a word, but so it's only now that we've gotten to a point where we can use those principles in a way that makes it real. Which, no, I don't think. I definitely didn't think it would be this quick. Like even the blockchain, to see it implemented. Going from theory as a concept to, holy shit, it exists, is, like we never thought it would happen, but it happened so quickly. And so that's going to be very interesting. Web3, artificial intelligence, the rate of change, how we evolve as humans, because there's going to be an evolution here massively. This is not like industrial age. This is big. This is like learning language for humans. This is going to change a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the question was, but
Yeah. No, you answered the first part of the question where you did foresee it was coming, but you didn't know it was going to come that quickly. But the second part was, when did you decide, like, yeah, I'm going to shift the focus of my brands to AI? Specifically with your new show. Amplify AI, all those things.
Yeah.
When were you like, I'm all in, and this is the way. I'm going to be the thought leader in this space.
Well, yeah, it's a couple of things happened, man. Like, I was struggling because I spent 11 years building the brand as a podcast guy and done so much work in the podcast world, and still continue to feel like that's a big part of what I want to do. Like, get people to use their voices, like genuinely use their voices, like kind of go, this is my conversation. I'm okay with people disagreeing with me. Show me a different perspective. Let me be the person that curates for X, whatever that X is for each person, right? So I'm a huge believer in that, but I struggled. I was like, is this a shiny ball? Should I be involved? But then things were coming so naturally to me. Like, I built a tool on a weekend in a hotel room in Cebu that people are buying right now for like $2,000 a license. And that's like, oh, that was coming, the whole look and feel and achievement of things was coming so easily, creating things at speed that, you have the business acumen, and then you have this way that you already know, because I can program in 21 languages. That's how they taught us to, computer science. It was like this whole thing from machine learning to how machines think to how this is based on our neurology and our psychology. So I was constantly in situations where there were people that were calling themselves experts were saying things that were not true at all. And I was like, why are you saying this stuff? And these are people that were really credible I thought were credible and, had an amazing brand. And then suddenly I was having to tiptoe my way around making these corrections in a way that doesn't offend them, I suppose, but call out the truth of the situation, because there were lots of people there that, everyone goes to some event to learn something, and being that massively misinformed is not a great idea. So, I don't know. And then when I got to New York, Gary was like, dude, what do you need permission? Just change your bio right now.
Yeah.
You can be the podcast guy and the AI guy. He's like, I do all these other things. I'm doing it. And he made a reel about it. And I was like, okay, this is serious. Yeah, it's been a journey, to be honest, to step into that role.
So quick pause here. I just wanted to highlight how Ronsley pivoted his brand, and how he did that was basically felt good about it because he got permission from Gary Vaynerchuk, who he referenced. But if you've been in the game for a long time, you've been running businesses for a while, it's inevitably going to happen. You're going to change. We're always evolving as humans, as people, as individuals and business owners. So it's okay to pivot your brand, especially if it's within the same space and industry. I also wanted to highlight Pat, a comment he made earlier about Kevin Harrington's book and Daniel Priestley's book, Key Person of Influence, which was a major catalyst for Ronsley building his brand. So I highly recommend you go check out episode 1 of Be Your Brand. So listen to that conversation with Kevin Harrington of Key Person of Influence. Highly recommend that book. Let's get back into it. Yeah, I love that, dude. Thanks for sharing that. 11 years building a certain sort of brand around yourself, your personal brand, your company, your mission, your clients, everything that you've achieved. It's really difficult to then decide like, hey, I have a passion for this, or it sounded in this case a responsibility. You're like, there's a lot of people that are just sharing misinformation, or they're not informed properly. Did you see it as that? Like, I got to step up to the plate because it's probably my mission now and my responsibility to say something.
Yeah, it just seemed like I was trained for right now. It just seemed like my whole life has been a bunch of little trainings to be in this position. Just there's like every time I think about what I've been trained on, like business, entrepreneurship, providing value, finding a way to express that value. But then on the computer science front, how to talk to machines, how to leverage automation, how to think in steps. The whole computer science is based on maths and physics, so there's a lot of principles that are applicable. Then I wrote my thesis on process quality. I took 2 companies to ISO 9001, which is a process framework to accreditize a company to say they have quality processes, so they have quality product. So it's like you put all those different things together, and you're like, I can't not see where this can go, sort of situation. So just trying to take a day as it comes, and then also trying to vision a lot, because I definitely didn't think I would be in this position, and it's like I'm having to really expand my imagination, I suppose.
Yeah, it's good. I appreciate the pivot and the boldness and courage to do so. whether Gary Vee, gave you permission or not, I think you would have arrived there on your own, honestly. Can we talk about, though, it's interesting, when you were giving your presentation, I was one of probably the few, I can't speak for everyone else, but if you notice this, we can kind of vent about it real quick. Everyone was asking you about tactics, bro. Like it was getting annoying to me because they're like, "What tools do I use and how do we use the tools?" I'm like, "Hey, this is not a workshop on tools you can go watch YouTube videos on." You were like, "I'm here to talk about ethics. I'm here to talk about compliance. I'm here to talk about the future of AI and how can we be responsible now that the genie is out of the bottle." Can you speak a bit about that? Because I know that's what you wanted to jam, and I was like, "Yeah, let's go, Ronsley. I want to jam on that, man." Because it's scary we grew up in a sci-fi, scary, world. How do we get our brains to stop going there and look at the glasses half full? Yeah, just jam on that for a bit.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely want to jam on this. It's just so front and center. I'm doing so much a literature review on this and writing my next book, and artificial intelligence is this great magic trick. You can look at it, you can be impressed, you can be like surprised, and we all are. But as entrepreneurs or as business owners, our main goal is the business goals. We've gotten into this for a reason, to impact certain people. And we have that in our brand identity and our brand goals, and we make our brand guidelines based on all those things. And if we have this vision and mission and value system, then we've got to take that into consideration when we are adopting AI, because it's a big adoption. There's a lot of things that will shift, and I think ignorance is not a defense anymore, because there's a lot of information available. So and also, this is becoming more and more important. So we've got to stop thinking of it as the machines necessarily. I feel like we got to understand that it's a life form, just like we are. It's just a silicon-based life form versus we being a carbon-based life form. We need food and water to function. It needs data and electricity to function. And if you just sort of think of it on those lines, you got to understand that it's learning. It's in its infancy, and it's as smart as the data it has. And then if you step back a bit and you see that a lot of the data that we have right now that has been documented by people in power. So colonial thinking. So what happened to our ancient wisdom of community and collaboration and humility and being together in a village sort of situation and being of service? And so there's a lot of things to unpack in there, because we know that those wisdom has been destroyed, whether it is the Indias or the Americas or the Australias or the Africas for sure. There's a lot of I'm learning a lot of really cool stuff right now. I had a conversation with an Inuit lady, and I'm telling everyone about this conversation. I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with an Inuit lady, trying to understand the wisdom, and she's like, "So Ronsley," halfway through the conversation, she goes, "So Ronsley, if you're saying artificial intelligence is going to be the biggest conversation of our lifetime, how does it affect my relative, the beaver, and my relative, the tree, and my relative, the bear?" And I was like, I had this quizzical look on my face, and she's like, "You've never heard anyone speak like that, have you?" I said, "No." She's like, "Well, if we don't think about the ones that don't have a voice to say this is hurting me, then how are we gonna move things forward without destroying other parts? If you just go after a goal without understanding what are you leaving behind in terms of destruction, that's not a great idea." So very right now focused on getting wisdom that's already been around for ages, centuries, like millennia. Algorithms that have existed in nature so that ecosystems are balanced and there's no waste. So there's all these clues that we already have. So how can businesses use that and align with their brand and achieve their business goals and adopt AI in the right manner is right now so cool, and I love the work I'm doing right now, to be honest.
Yeah. What are you? what's some of the work specifically that you're loving right now?
Yeah, aligning those and creating the framework on how a business can adopt artificial intelligence, how they can adopt it, the steps, how you like collect important information like your brand vision and your identity, and then you interpret your brand guidelines, and then you streamline, your processes. And the real important thing to understand for businesses is not really, okay, I'm going to adopt AI, but what it gives and what it delivers. It's definitely something to measure is the reduction of cognitive load. Like, we all have a limit of cognition that we can use as human beings, and we can see people getting, stressed and anxious and all sorts of mental health issues. And I'm saying that adopt AI with the intention of reducing cognitive load on your team, on yourself, augment your intelligence with artificial intelligence, and align that with the business processes so that you're like, okay, this is achieving my business goals in line with my brand identity. For example, brand identity means that if you say as one of your values that my brand stands for our people come first, and then you adopt AI and sack a whole bunch of people, that doesn't align with your brand identity and causes mistrust. And you could adopt AI, get quicker, but in the grander scheme of things, it's a big risk to take that your brand will recover from something like that. So I'm, like I'm saying, like it's such a cool place to bring all that together, to say, okay, here's the guide for businesses to use to ethically, responsibly use AI and do it for good and solve meaningful problems.
I love that. That's a really deep sort of thought. I'd love to peel that onion back a little bit, where you say, a lot of people do say, our team comes first, or our team is family, and that's part of our core values. But as AI became more adopted and understood and available, what's some of the first things that happened is a boatload of layoffs in the creative space, in the IT space, the writing specifically. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and then also some of the contradictions that you're seeing out there?
I mean, people have no framework, right? So they're doing what they've known before. And before, it's an industrial sort of age of thinking where you're a machine, and if the machine don't fit within the machine, then you don't belong in the parts equipment so section of the thing. So instead of going, okay, to produce X, we can reduce our workload, kind of go, well, if each one of these people were trained to augment their skills with artificial intelligence, what could we potentially achieve? And how quickly could we get to our miserly goals that we have right now? Like, could that potentially be something that a business might totally use and explode? Like, why think of, okay, I can do this quicker, so with the less human resources, but go, I suddenly now have an assistant for every single employee if they know how to use it right. Like, oh my God, like, how powerful could that be? And it's really about the leadership aligning on the vision of, okay, this could potentially change our business entirely, and we need to right now do it effectively. So they don't have a framework, they don't have a guideline, so they're doing what they know. That's how we've operated so far. So, this book couldn't come sooner, to be honest. I wish I could get it out quicker, but it's just not coming. It's just coming out at the pace it's supposed to come out.
Yeah. Even with AI by your side, right? It's still good. It still takes human hands right now too, until we get the neural link. But so talk a little bit about what you're jazzed about in your book. Like, what are you starting to uncover? What are you starting to explore that you want to share now that people can learn from?
Yeah, I think that process is everything. Funny that you have someone with a master's in process quality here talking about process everything. But if you have a quality way of doing things, like let me give your audience an example. Like if you have a certain way of making a cup of coffee, that's your way of making a cup of coffee. For you, that is your coffee. But if you say to someone, make me a cup of coffee, they have a different method. They will not come out the same. However, if you say, I know how to make a really good cup of coffee, and for me, this is a good cup of coffee, and these are the steps that you got to do to achieve it, and these are the ingredients that you need, and in this order, you put them together, the chances of you getting your cup of coffee or the one that you want is very high, and that in itself is that's simply process quality. So if you have a quality process, so figure out quality processes, because then you can know what part to apply artificial intelligence on. And that is your human intelligence, which you're augmenting with artificial intelligence and technology. And hopefully you're doing it for a greater good, because usually entrepreneurs get into business, or at least maybe my hope is all of us get into business to make an impact on a certain type of person. We feel very strongly about making this impact, and we care about this certain type of person, which is our audience, and we kind of create all this content for this person and create ways to solve this person's problem. And we should kind of go, well, how can we do that better, quicker, faster, easier? Easier is probably more important. Like, how can we change their lives and actually make that impact, and have a bigger vision? Because that's going to be our biggest thing right now, is a bigger vision. Is like, what can we imagine? Like, how can we change our whole imagination? I think it's going to come down to that, really.
Yeah, I'd be remiss, Ronsley, if I didn't address what a lot of people thinking. I know that sort of the layman. I'll throw myself in there as well. When everything was revealed a little over a year ago, just released to the public, right? I'm curious what happened to you when you first saw it. And you're like, what the heck? But can you address the fear around it? I'm a Gen Xer. We grew up with Terminator, we grew up with Matrix, we grew up with all the things where, they don't paint a pretty picture. Can you speak to that? Like, yes, that's the worst case. Is that even possible? The worst case scenario? And then what's the best case scenario in your mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thanks for aligning it on that, because there's a line of consciousness, there's a line of thinking that believes that we have to raise our consciousness to survive as a species, because if we don't, then we might not survive as a species, because the machines will. And the reason for that is we can understand, if we understand that it's a life form and it's evolved just like we've evolved. And we've evolved to do certain things. Like, it's only in the last decade, or maybe 2 decades, that we've been able to express emotional intelligence. Like, say, okay, this is what emotional intelligence is. We've not been able to do that. We've had it for ages, but we've not been able to express it and put it down in a language and understanding and research and work and deep thinking on the topic and matter. So we're still learning lots and lots of things. So if we just consider that this is learning, and we can either be the parents that say, do as I say, or the parents that say, do as I do. And whoever has kids kind of knows how one of those turn out and how the other turns out. And that's why I feel there's a big shift required, in the sense that, yes, if it goes by the way we currently think as a species, that we are the superior species, so we can destroy ecosystems as we go along the way. It doesn't matter, as long as we get to our goal, as long as profit is the most important thing. If we keep going down that path, we don't have a choice. We don't have a chance. It is a situation but it is still in our hands. It's like, you're going into the final game of the season, and you still know that it's all in your hands. If you win today, then you get it. And we've got to understand that it's a big shift required. And yeah, we can all make that shift, I suppose. So it's just about us wanting to make that shift.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the steps? I mean, I feel it. I don't know if you feel it. I think it depends on which side you're vibrating on, but it's I definitely feel a shift towards that enlightenment, and personally, but then also collectively. How do you feel? I mean, social media especially plays a role in that, in affecting that frequency and that consciousness. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? What do you see, and how can we be better?
It's a thing. Like, what, I don't know whether it's good or bad, but it's a thing for sure. It's there. So accepting it is probably half the battle in most cases. Is like it being of the acceptance that it exists and it plays some sort of part and role. And I think it starts with us, man. I think it starts with the individual. It starts with each one of us, and it is the hardest one. It's literally the hardest one to do. And even being open and honest and finding a space where you can express, because a lot of times, I mean, I love doing these podcasts, primarily, Eric, because I'll say something that I'm literally hearing for the first time. And it might sound like it's a great piece of thinking or a great line and whatever, but it's come from somewhere. It's a download, and those are very, very useful, because I can say for sure that see what we've been able to create on the planet. Just step back and imagine every meal you have, how many people had to be involved. Like, I really find this really interesting narrative in the entrepreneur world about, I did this alone. There's no possible way. Absolutely no possible way. There's a lot of people have sacrificed, and we think about generationally as well. People like myself, my ancestors did not have the opportunity to switch on a microphone and say whatever they want to say, whenever they wanted to say it. It was not a thing. So I feel a lot of people sacrifice for me to be in this position to I don't know, be responsible and take whatever gifts you've been given and use the platform that the ancestors have given and sort of see what is possible. I don't know what that looks like. I'm still trying to figure it out every day, but I think it starts with us, and I think if we can do it, then the really close people to us, like our kids who are looking at us every day, then maybe the next generation will solve it. And I've been talking about this chef of mine because I went to chef school, and there was this head chef of mine when we were cutting 25 kilos of cabbage for sauerkraut, and we were talking, and in the conversation he said this thing to me. He said, Ronsley, if you're trying to solve a problem that can be solved in your lifetime, then you're thinking too small. So maybe that's the situation, maybe it just starts with us. We don't see the results. We just do the right thing so that the next generation sees the results.
I love that. How do you feel about a collective, of people that understand it most? The good, the bad, the ugly, can place all the cards on the table, and map out a future that we all want. Is that in the works that you're aware of? I know that Musk wants something like that. He's participated in global conversations. Do you think there should be an official sort of UN for AI?
Yes, I think there should be some guidelines definitely around artificial intelligence for the right reasons, not for countries to prosper and put other countries down. That's not the reason that they should exist. They should genuinely and not to cover global catastrophes, and it should. So that's the problem right now. Is like, okay, if there is a situation where guidelines are put, what is the intention of that committee? What are their primary goals, or what are they trying to achieve? Because AI definitely has to be transparent and has to be available to everybody. It cannot be kept to certain, you cannot keep this potential only to certain people. That's just not fair. it's like, giving only a few people electricity or the internet. It's just not fair. So it has to be transparent. There has to be diverse data in there. Really important. It has to not be only one version of a situation. There has to be this whole inclusion and diversity piece has to come together. It's a collaboration of the highest order. It has to be, and yes, that collective has to exist. But I don't know. I don't have the answer on how that could happen. But yes, I would. That would be the ideal situation.
Yeah. I love that conversation you had with your buddy because that is something that many of us are doing. We're thinking too small. This is not something that's going to be solved in our lifetime or many, many generations. Do you foresee a future where we do merge with the technology? I think Rogan has made the best analogy in that. He says, we're this electric caterpillar. Have you heard him say this before? I love this analogy. And he says, we're probably, our goal on a subconscious level, if anything, it's in our DNA that we keep evolving. We keep creating technology to the degree where we merge with it. And we don't realize we're creating this cocoon, this digital cocoon. And then who knows what emerges, right? What type of beautiful butterfly potentially. How do you feel about that sort of idea that eventually hundreds of years from now, maybe, or maybe less, or maybe more, that's what happens?
Well, I'm going to use an analogy that I learned from someone that was very famous who said it on, well, actually it was said on the Avengers movie. And it was Iron Man that said this, like it was in the first Avengers movie, they were searching to see what like Nick Fury was hiding, and then he had this line where he goes, like an intelligence agency that fears intelligence. So, like think of it that way. If we're an intelligent species, why should we fear intelligence? In general, whether it's divine intelligence, whether it's emotional intelligence, whether it is, whatever intelligence, artificial intelligence, I don't know whether we've even thought that. I don't know whether we even kind of come to that understanding that it's intelligence, we shouldn't fear it. If we are intelligent, like, why fear it? I mean, what good can come from fearing it necessarily? I don't know.
I guess basically, one of the most basic of human traits and emotions is fear of the unknown. So we're getting to a point in our lifetime where, for the very first time, humans are not like that was our go-to, right? That was what separated us from every species on the planet. Is we had intelligence, we had self-awareness, compassion, a conscience. But now we see this thing that could potentially surpass us, right? I think that's where a lot of the fear lies, is like, oh, what happens then? But the thing is, there's conflict versus collaboration in most people's minds. It's like, oh, now it's a fight, right? It's Terminator versus collaboration, making something better and bigger.
I mean, literally think of it as kids. Like either the kid can look at you and say, this is what my parents did, this is why I'm the person I am, because I learned from the way they were as people. They embedded these foundational values inside me that make me a good human being. So when I grow older, I'd want to hang out with them. I'd want to take care of them. I'd want to see that they, were comfortable in their last years. This is an example, right? Like if we use just something as simple as that as an example, like could we use AI better? And then kind of look at what, as each one of us are looking at business and looking to solve these problems, could we align that in the same manner and go, there's a different way to think about this, and we can all win because it's so fast and it does so much work, and we don't have the same constraints as we had before.
Yeah. How do we avoid being complacent? People tend to the majority of people, I'll say, tend to want to be lazy or, strap on a headset and just Netflix and chill or play video games and not contribute to society or not work very hard to create or innovate. With these tools in place, how do we prevent ourselves from creating more for people to consume versus just creating to make a better world?
Great question. There's a very strong correlation between consume and create that's going to come around. And again, this is not my thinking. It was actually said on my podcast by Daniel Priestley. And I would really suggest your listeners go and listen to that, because the way he explained the content versus create wedge is what he called it. It was so valuable that I remember the exact term. And we can get caught up in either way. And I think for the create people, it's important to understand that everyone's on their own timeline. And we can only control what we can control and be ready to help the ones that we can genuinely help. And we can make it more affordable. We can finally solve for the last person. Like, think about it. In business, you always have a certain number of people that your product doesn't work for. There's different reasons, and you say, okay, no, this is. But you can now solve for the last person. Like, you can really like if you're trying to, I don't know, as an example, get businesses more profit, and you do it by being a great accountant, making up an example, then you might never have the opportunity to have bad clients, because you can give them all the profit and you can do it really well, and you can make sure that your team is happy, because all the stuff that they're burdened with cognitively, they can take off their plate and they can be creatively thinking. Then you just imagine the good that can come from that.
Yeah, I love that. As our time here is winding down, brother, I do appreciate, the time we spent together and your wisdom and your experience. Can you share something real quickly? And then I want to ask, how people can reach out to you. Is who were some of your greatest influences? Whether it be in family or business, but who's somebody pivotal in your life that you'd like to share?
Well, I think my dad has always been super insightful, and he's been someone that never really complained about things and got on with it, and also created some really cool stuff from nothing. Really, I'm not from nothing, but with the resources he had and what he was given, that's probably a better way to say that, not from nothing. But he was definitely an influence, and he one of the things he used to say to me a lot, he's like, don't forget the foundations you've been given, which is so valuable, because it kind of reminds me of all the things that could have not happened. Like, I'm lucky to even been born in this particular family, as an example. So Dad's been huge, but I feel I learn from everyone. I'm a sponge. I've always been that. In school, I've been that. I've just been that type of person where I'm constantly in learning phase, and I don't like to be called an expert, because I feel like I don't know so much. Actually, it's hard for me to take on and say I'm an expert in anything really, but in general, I feel like I'm just learning. I'm still learning. I feel I'm learning from a lot of people. I'm learning from every conversation, from every situation and experience. So just feel lucky and blessed, really.
That's awesome, brother. Well, I appreciate the humility and the humbleness, man. I truly resonate with that, and you and your message and what you're doing, man. So how can we help? How can we support? And how can we reach out to you?
Thanks. Well, thanks for this conversation. This has been cool. I definitely would love a recording, because I've definitely said some things that I would have not thought of before. So I appreciate the conversation and the line of questioning. It's really helpful. for your listeners, I feel that the best way you can help right now is understand AI, understand artificial intelligence, understand how it can help, understand how you can help it be part of the conversation. We need everyone to contribute to the conversation. Use your voice. Stop playing small if that's the thing. And if you're afraid, then know that we're all afraid, and then we're all worried about what could or could not happen. And we only know when we do a rep. So do the rep, and that's all. And if you want more, I suppose Ronsley is a very unique name. You'll find me anywhere. Just Google it.
Yeah, absolutely. I recommend people also go check out your book, Amplify, and also my love affair, my AI love affair.com is a cool place to check out for your show. Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Ronsley Vaz. If you were inspired or you learned something new, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. If you'd like to learn more about how to build your brand or your YouTube channel, hit us up at info@onairbrands. That's info@onairbrands.com so that we can find ways to help you build your brand. I'm Erik Cabral, and I hope that I added value in your life today.
You have now entered the Entrepreneur Circle.